There's a stove where you can hold your hand flat on the surface, right next to a pot of water that is boiling hard, and the glass under your palm is barely warm. No flame, no glowing red element, nothing that looks hot is anywhere near the water. And here's the part that breaks your brain. The stove isn't heating the water at all. It can't. The cooktop makes almost no heat of its own. The pan you set down is heating itself from the inside, and the stove is just quietly telling it to. Once you see how, you'll never look at a burner the same way. Think about every other stove you've used. A gas burner makes a flame, and the flame heats the pan. An electric coil or a glass-top radiant burner glows red hot, and that hot surface heats the pan. In both cases, the stove gets hot first, then hands that heat over to your food. Most of it leaks into the air, the kitchen, your face. An induction cooktop does none of that. Under the smooth glass, there is no flame and no heating element. There's a flat coil of copper wire, wound in a spiral like a loose clock spring. That coil never gets hot on purpose. It doesn't glow. It doesn't burn. All it does is push electricity around in a very particular way, and that turns the pan itself into the heat source. The stove stays a bystander. So how does a cool coil boil a pot of water it never touches? Magnetism. Here's the first piece of physics, and it's one you already know. Run electricity through a coil of wire, and the coil becomes a magnet. It's called an electromagnet, and it's the same trick inside every doorbell and every junkyard crane. Send current one way, you get a magnetic field pointing up out of the coil. Reverse the current, the field flips and points down. Now speed that up. An induction cooktop doesn't send a steady current through its coil. It sends an alternating current that reverses direction over and over, incredibly fast, typically somewhere between 20 and 60,000 times every second. So the magnetic field above the coil isn't just sitting there, it's slamming back and forth, up and down, tens of thousands of times a second, faster than you could ever sense. To your hand, it's invisible and completely still. To a piece of metal sitting in it, it's a hurricane. That flipping field is the whole engine of the machine. Now let's set a pan into it. Set a steel pan on the glass, and the bottom of that pan is now sitting inside a magnetic field that is flipping tens of thousands of times a second. And there's a rule in physics. A changing magnetic field pushes on electric charges. Metal is full of loose electrons that are free to move, so that violently flipping field grabs those electrons and drives them in circles, round and round inside the metal of the pan. These little whirlpools of electric current have a name. They're called eddy currents, like eddies swirling in a river. Here's the payoff. No metal is a perfect conductor. Every pan fights the current flowing through it a little bit. That resistance is friction for electricity, and just like rubbing your hands together, pushing current against resistance makes heat. It's the exact same effect that makes a toaster wire or a space heater glow. Except here, the resistance is inside the pan, so the heat is born inside the pan. The stove never gets the memo. The field does the pushing, the pan's own metal does the resisting, and the bottom of that pan heats up directly in seconds. The pot genuinely cooks itself. The cooktop is just a machine for making a magnetic field, and the pan turns that field into heat. But this only works if the pan plays along, and most metal doesn't. Try this at home. Take a fridge magnet and stick it to the bottom of your pans. If it grabs on hard, that pan will work on induction. If it slides off or barely holds, it won't. That one cheap test tells you everything, and here's why it works. Induction needs a pan made of magnetic metal, meaning iron and the steels that contain it, cast iron, and the magnetic grades of stainless steel. Two things have to be true for the field to dump lots of heat into the pan. The metal has to grip the magnetic field strongly, and it has to have enough electrical resistance to turn those swirling currents into real heat. Iron does both beautifully. That's a happy accident of the same property. It's magnetism that makes the fridge magnet stick. Now the metals that fail. Aluminum and copper are fantastic electrical conductors, which sounds good, but it's the wrong thing here. They barely resist the current, so the eddy currents swirl without making much heat. And they're not magnetic, so they don't grip the field in the first place. Plain aluminum pans, copper pans, glass, and ceramic just sit there cold on an induction top. This is the real catch of the whole technology, and we'll come back to it. If the magnet won't stick, the stove won't cook. Because the heat is made right inside the pan, induction skips a whole chain of waste. A gas flame throws most of its heat into the air around the pot. Only a third or so of that energy ever reaches your food. Induction puts the energy almost entirely where you want it. Roughly 85 to 90% of the electricity ends up as heat in the pan, versus around 40% for gas. That's why a pot of water that takes minutes to boil on gas can boil dramatically faster on induction, on the same amount of power. And control is instant. There's no hot element that has to warm up and then slowly cool down. The heat is the magnetic field, and you can throttle that field the way you throttle a light with a dimmer, immediately. Turn it down and the pan stops heating, almost at once. It's the responsiveness cooks love about gas, without the flame. Which brings us back to the trick from the very start. Why does the glass stay cool? Because nothing is trying to heat the glass. The coil is cool. The field passes straight through the glass without heating it, the same way it passes through your hand. The only thing that gets hot is the pan. Now the glass directly under a hot pot does warm up, but only because the pan is sitting on it and leaking heat back down by simple contact, the way a hot mug warms a table. Lift the pan off, and that patch cools fast, and the rest of the surface was never hot to begin with. The heat lives in the pan, not the stove. So it's faster, more efficient, and safer to the touch. Why isn't every kitchen induction? Here's the honest ledger. The cookware problem. This is the big one. If your pans aren't magnetic, they simply don't work, and you may have to replace part of your kitchen. That fridge magnet test decides what makes the cut. The buzz. Because the coil is vibrating a magnetic field tens of thousands of times a second, it can make things hum. You'll sometimes hear a faint whine or buzz from the pan, usually louder on high power or with lighter, multi-layer pans. There's also a cooling fan inside the unit. It's a real sound some people find annoying. Upfront cost. Induction cooktops generally cost more than a plain electric or gas range, though the gap keeps shrinking. You may earn some of it back in efficiency and faster cooking, but you pay first. The pacemaker worry. You'll hear that induction is dangerous for people with pacemakers. For the vast majority of modern devices, this is overblown. The field falls off fast with distance and is mostly contained to the pan. The standard cautious advice is just to keep a little distance, and anyone with an implant should check with their doctor. But the scary version of this story is mostly a myth, and no flame. If you love charring a pepper directly over fire, blackening a tortilla on the grate, or the theater of a live flame, induction can't do that. It only heats what it can grip magnetically, and open air isn't a pan. Let's kill the two big myths. Myth 1, the stove heats the pan. It doesn't. On induction, the stove makes a fast-flipping magnetic field and nothing more. The pan heats itself, from eddy currents swirling inside its own metal. That's why the glass can stay cool while the water boils, and it's the entire counterintuitive heart of the thing. Myth 2, it's some exotic new technology. The physics is over a century old. It's the same electromagnetism behind doorbells, transformers, and the electric meter on the side of your house. The only new part is doing it fast enough and cheaply enough to sit under a sheet of kitchen glass. That's the whole machine. A cool copper spiral, an invisible field slamming back and forth tens of thousands of times a second, and a magnetic pan that turns that field into its own heat. The stove doesn't cook your food. It just hands the pan the power to cook itself. Subscribe to Whambox for more How Does It Actually Work explainers.